Welcome to another episode of Just More Fix. This is James. With me in this episode is Lacey.
Hey.
You can find us online at justmorefix.com or on Twitter at justmorefix. If you like us, you can support us at Patreon, and you can give us a rating and review at iTunes wherever you find us at. In this episode, we're going to GameStorm Three Sisters. And now, it's time to get our gaming fix.
I'm Willie D. Nelson from All Things Good and Nerdy, a pop culture podcast, part of the Gonna Geek Network. Just like the show you're checking out now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other tantalizingly geeky shows at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
Welcome to another episode of Just More Fix. Not exactly sure when this one is going to drop, so a couple quick announcements, I suppose. We are still in process working on putting together our protospiel for Game in Terre Haute, so not sure exactly what that's going to look like, but if you are a game designer at any sort of level, whether that's board games or tabletop games, and you're looking to playtest some things, you can email me, James at justmorefix.com, and get more details on that depending on where we're at in process and in relation to when this releases. But we are going to get some kind of protospiel going in Terre Haute. Maybe bi-monthly, I think we're thinking initially, and hope to see all of you out there, or any of you out there, and try out and test out some games and help grow new budding game designers. Second announcement is that November 1st through 3rd, we are going to be having our very own HillCon. I think this is HillCon 4? Is that right?
Ooh, I don't know.
Ooh.
Because we had a couple of, in a year.
Yeah.
So I think it might be more than that.
HillCon 4 question mark. Right on. Either way, no matter which HillCon it is, it's going to be awesome no matter what. So by now you're probably tired of me mentioning it, but we always get together once a year with all of our friends because some of them live further away than others, and we all stay here out at our place here in rural Indiana and have 3 amazing days of gaming with good food, good friends, good drinks, and good games. And just want to recommend everyone to do it. And if you need to coincide it with our HillCon, that's be awesome. And you can drop us a line and take pictures and hit us up on social media. And just have a good time. Get together with people, relax and play some great games and have some fun and de-stress and enjoy yourselves. So ours is going to be November 1st through 3rd, and it's going to be awesome. And we're going to play loads of games. And we usually record something there too as well. So there'll be a lot of good times. So today we are going to have another game storming session. So the last time we have done this, it actually developed. The first time was sort of unintentional. It developed into our first scene, which was Worms. And the second time we did it, it's called Game Storming Villages. And that developed into our second scene, which is the Hastings Party. So
I think we did another game storming session for the Tales from the Loop game.
I think we did, but that didn't develop into a full-on zine. But
It developed into a full-on game that was awesome.
All right, so today we are going to GameStorm what is going to turn into our third quarterly zine, which will be dropping sometime in November because we're early on in the production process of this one. So the name of this right now is called Three Sisters. So do you want to set this up? Because this kind of came out of a game that you were running, or do you want me to do the initial setup and you can kind of shed details on it?
Why don't you go ahead and do the initial setup?
Okay, so
I want to hear you tell me what you think my game is.
So we were sitting around trying to figure out what kind of a game we're going to play, and Lacey was like, hey, I'm going to run this game, and you're all going to be witches. So we are witches with characters made out of frostbitten, the class made out of frostbitten and mutilated. And so we kind of were tossing around some ideas of how we were going to do it, and I was like, we should just all be in a coven together. And so we are 3 sisters who are not actually sisters. We're 3 women who are just part of a coven, right? And we ended up taking on the sort of some Bluebeard's Bride style classic feminine tropes, right? So with some twists on them. So we have 3 characters in it, which is where the 3 sisters comes from. And my character is more of a matronly, motherly kind of character. And then Lee's character is sort of a younger, innocent. No, I'm sorry, that's Carrie. Carrie is the younger one. Carrie's character is the younger, more innocent, and innocent is kind of in quotes, really, because we're all just sort of terrible people doing whatever we need to survive and do what we need, accomplish our own goals, right?
Right, yeah. And you're single women in the 1760s.
Yeah. And then Lee's character is sort of like more earthy, does a lot with the garden and that kind of stuff, and quiet, watchful kind of a character, I think. You think it's accurate, or?
I mean, I don't know. You said Bluebeard's bride trope, so like I would have pictured you as the mother, him as the femme fatale, and Carrie's character as the virgin, or possibly kind of somewhere in between femme fatale and animus.
Who?
Lee.
Oh, Lee.
Yeah,
I can see him more as the animus. Yeah, because my character,
not Finny. That's Carrie. Anka. Sorry.
Yeah, my character is somewhere between the mother and the femme fatale or whatever. But my sort of. Well, I guess it is the femme fatale because I just use that to sort of get what I need or whatever, you know what I mean, as leverage. So we are in Gevaudan, and we're trying to prevent the slaughter of the Beast of Gevaudan.
Yeah.
So the myth part of this is really cool, and I'll sort of let you go into that. But for the people... For anyone who doesn't know what the Beast of Gevaudan is, it's an actual creature that happened.
Yeah, I did not make up Beast of Gevaudan. So
Gevaudan is a city in not city is probably too strong of a word. It's an area in France. And in the 1700s, there is this giant wolf that is eating loads of people. And so right now...
So many people that King Louis himself offers a reward for the killing of this creature.
Because it killed so many people. It was out of control. Yeah. So the one important thing to make sure to note about this, and I think this is important to convey in terms of like getting this across to people when you're running the game, is that wolves in this time period are terrifying. They like, there's a reason they have all these fairy tales with Big Bad Wolf and all this kind of stuff, is because wolves kill people. Like they're super smart, and they're, you know, intense, and they're good at what they do, and they survive anywhere, right? Just to give some context, in World War II, on the Western Front, the Germans and Russians are fighting each other and shooting each other and killing each other. But there's this thing that happens with what's called a super pack. And it's about when a wolf pack reaches about 1,000 wolves, they literally fear nothing at all. The Germans and Russians stop fighting each other. They call a truce to kill the wolves. So, like, even with modern weapons, not in the 1700s, it's just unbelievable. And there's another document.
So, like, I mean, just to interject.
No, go ahead.
Like, in the current day, we consider werewolves to be kind of a cheesy sort of thing, right? But, like, this was a legitimate fear for people. Fear. And the idea of the werewolf grows out of that fear.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we're very used to hearing about, like, the fear of Dracula and vampires out of Eastern Europe, right? And how they used to break people's legs before they buried them, and all these kind of traditions that they have. So that same level of fear, if not more, exists in France in the 1700s because they're so terrified of these wolves. So if you look at a dog, like, all dogs fundamentally come from wolves, right? But there's this intelligence that looks back at you, right? When you look at them, they can kind of see you puzzling things out, right? Coyotes do this, any kind of sort of canine animal. And I think that's where the sort of like the werewolf idea comes from, is the fact that they are intelligent. And it's really easy to sort of apply human emotion and human thought processes to these wolves as they look back at you, right? Trying to puzzle out, how do I get this dude? I'm going to eat him. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So in terms of just the raw history of it, the Beast of Gevaudan eats a ton of people in the area of Gevaudan. King Louis puts out a bounty on the wolf. Mm-hmm. The wolf does get killed.
Yes.
And there's some really cool woodcuts that will go into the game. Or into the zine. So, but it does go successfully-ish, I guess you might say, right?
Yeah, I believe, if memory serves me correctly, they do initially capture an exceedingly large wolf, only to find out that it is not the correct wolf. But they do eventually end up presumably catching the correct one because the death toll ceases. Mm-hmm. But there is sort of like a false positive that happens at the beginning.
Right on. So from there, that is like the broad scope of where the initial inspiration comes from. Comes from, correct?
Yes.
So in terms of our game, where do we?
Okay, so that's kind of the initial idea, and I like the idea of werewolves as a curse. So I kind of developed this sort of mini mythology to go along with that. And so I thought, what would be a sin worthy of cursing someone with werewolves? Because that's pretty substantial, right? you're talking about like women and femininity and in that kind of aspect. And, you know, there's a lot of, especially in this time period, there's a lot of suppressing of female sexuality, and there's a lot of control on the male side that goes along with that. So I kind of pictured this, not really like, it's not exactly like a regular man, but not exactly like a god either. So I just call him like the king of the first men. You know, it's kind of like very Game of Thrones, like the first men. Like,
right.
You know, sure, they're men, but it's just sort of like assumed that they're maybe like something a little more transcendent. And so he sees the goddess Luna, who is, of course, you know, the lunar goddess of the moon, all of that. And he covets her. Because she is so beautiful and just sort of the embodiment of everything that is feminine.
Right.
And they have this relationship. But she is not... She's not like your housewife, right? She is free and likes to be that way. And so then he gets jealous because she is going out and, you know, enjoying herself. As you do.
Wild and free.
Right. Wild and free. Sort of that untamable feminine spirit kind of aspect, right?
Right on.
And so he curses women, like all women, because those are the goddess Luna's people.
Right.
So he curses all women with the suffering that is childbirth and menstruation because... You know, you men may not be aware it's not a pleasant experience. You know?
Right.
So why does it have to suck so bad? Mythology. That's why. And that's a pretty consistent theme throughout time as well. Right. Where it's some kind of curse. It's the same thing with the Bible, right? So I basically just re-envisioned that. It's like, okay, original sin, your punishment is that childbirth is freaking terrible.
Right.
Congratulations. Promiscuity punished accordingly.
Right.
So that happens. And then obviously Luna is like, WTF, my man. Right. This is not okay. So she, in turn, curses the realm of men with the plight that is lycanthropy. The sons of the first men are cursed to become wolves and basically massacre the human people. And so that's where we start. And then you guys are part of the coven of Luna. So you worship the goddess Luna, and it is your job to be certain that this curse basically continues as long as possible. So you are there to protect the werewolves to ensure that they inflict maximum damage upon the realm of mankind. And so then there's some kind of stuff in there, like basically, you know, you guys can't be married. You can have children and you can raise those children. But if they're male children, then once they come of age, they have to leave society. And then so you're officially entered. Sorry.
If there are male children that are born by women of this coven, do they automatically bear the curse?
No.
Okay.
No. I had actually written that it was once in every 3 generations that it happens, but I don't really know that this is relevant. It's just sort of like what I felt like at the time, I guess.
Very good.
And then the other aspect is that you're officially entered into the coven once you have your first menarch, basically. Okay. So once you have your first period, then you're recognized as being a member of the goddess.
When you in quotes, become a woman.
Right, exactly.
Okay, very good. I don't know if it's something that you intended, but when we were playing the game, one of the things that I immediately went to was, well, we're not combat characters. Like, we have some spells and cool abilities that we can do, but we're by no means going to stand up in a like straight up fight against people. Plus,
and I would like to add too that the werewolf is not by any way beholden to you. Like, it is a creature of murder.
Right.
And if you were to come across its path unprotected, it would murder you also.
Yeah. Well, and also where I was going was that we're not capable of like going and finding the people that are going to hunt the werewolf and killing them. Like, that's not what we're going to be able to do. Also, so I think it's important to note that in terms of when we're playtesting this, we're using Lamentations of the Flame Princess, which is an OSR game and is very, very unforgiving and deadly. So that sort of shades our decision making as well. my initial thought when we started playing this was, we can't kill the hunters in a stand-up fight. We don't want to be anywhere actually physically near this werewolf. So my thought was, cool, we'll go there, we'll establish ourselves as prominent people, and then we're just going to cast doubt on everyone else and try and make people look guilty. Like, we'll put like wolf hair in their clothes and whatever it is. But basically, we're going to keep the eyes off of the actual creature and on whoever else we decide that's causing us a problem, as you usually do in that sort of like witch trial kind of way. Like, oh, hey, I want to buy their land. They look like a witch today. What if we set them on fire and I can just buy their land? Kind of like in that sort of classic kind of a way. So the game, in my mind, was almost more of a political game with the potential of violence, but then always knowing we're going to have to find a way to flee and survive or make allies to protect us because we can't necessarily do it ourselves, right?
Yeah, and that's really what I wanted, because when you're looking at this, it's basically mob action, right? Like, there's a riot of people that are trying to hunt down this werewolf. And so I like pulling over that idea from like old vampire games where you can't just straight up fight all of humanity. So you're going to have to figure out a way to be a little bit more wily and clever to get it done. And that's really what I wanted when we were approaching the werewolf idea anyway. Like, everybody's done the werewolf thing. It's been done 1,000 times, hunting it down. Right. All of that. So I was like, okay, well, what if instead of that, like, you're trying to keep the werewolf alive? Prolong its life, right. Yeah. And how much more mayhem and headache is that for you than trying to kill the werewolf? Yeah. Like, it's so much worse.
You're right. I guess in terms of making this a game, right? I got a couple questions to clarify, unless you have anything else to go into real quick.
No.
Okay. So, in terms of sort of like brainstorming and putting this together, our game is amazing and I absolutely love it, right? So I know when you talk about how we're going to put the zine together, that we're going to include the 3 witches, and you can play the 3 witches and play it that way. So you have three sisters that are sort of out the gate ready to go, and they're sort of on their path of trying to prolong the life of this werewolf through whatever means they can. On the other side of it, I feel like we could put this together in more of a conventional way too, to where if you wanted to play mercenaries that are coming to this town to just hunt the werewolf, that you could incorporate it that way. And then the 3 sisters are already there, and they're sort of like the characters that you might interact with that might cause problems and kill you, or frame you up, right? So that you become victims of the lynch mob, right? Which is, either way, no matter who you're playing, you're sort of dabbling in this area of like trying to sick the mob on someone, right? So if you're the mercenaries that come to kill the wolf and you discover the witches, you're like, they're a witch, set the mob on them. At the same time, if you're a witch, if you're one of the 3 sisters, you can be like, no, those mercenaries are clearly the werewolf, set the mob on them, right? So you're kind of like playing with fire from no matter which side of this you're on, right? So I guess my question initially is, do you feel like there's a difference in how we brainstorm this game depending on which side of that we come from?
I think, yeah. I think there is definitely a difference, but the way that I set it up was to kind of create this sort of sandbox village that you can explore and interact with. Okay. Which works for either side.
I agree. That was my kind of initial, when I was kind of like thinking about it, that's where I was thinking the exact same thing.
Right. Because either way, you're coming in as outsiders.
Right. And you have to see the world around you. So, but you said that you saw, like, there are some differences. So what differences would you see and how that would come together?
The reception that you get in the town is obviously going to be different. Right. When you're coming in as a savior of the people versus that suspicion, like, why would you move here? Like, haven't you heard the rumors? What's going on that, 3 unaccompanied women decided that Gevaudan was the place to be now. Right. So there's sort of like doubt and suspicion that's kind of cast on you from the beginning, working against you in that aspect. Whereas if you come in as a soldier who is here to, save the village from the terrible beast, then there's obviously probably more welcoming spirit involved with that. And I don't know that... So the characters within the city have their own kind of backgrounds and abilities. And some of them are, I don't know if they're less important. I mean, maybe not.
Well, maybe less connected directly? Is that what you're looking at? Like,
no, there's... So... I hate to give this away because you're like in the game, but like there is someone in the town that is a cleric.
Oh, okay.
And so in the Lamentations of the Flame Princess system, remove curse is a spell.
Yeah.
And so that problem could be solved with the snap of a finger, basically.
Right on.
And so I built some other like flaws into this person to make it like less likely that they would no, not even that you would think they were a cleric, like less likely that they would solve the problem because they have such
right. Okay, very good.
But they could, and I had kind of accidentally done that, honestly, because I've never been big on system, and so especially for like spellcasters,
right?
And I stumbled across it by accident, and I was like, "Oh my god!"
No.
Like at fifth level, you could just solve
my whole
this
game
problem.
came apart with one spell. Thank God they're not clerics.
But then I decided I was like, no, I'm gonna leave it because I had also accidentally created this person with such a serious fatal flaw that like it was probably not going to be relevant. But if like you were really crafty as a soldier coming to the town, you could figure it out and like find a way to work around it to have them basically solve this problem for you.
Okay, so let me ask you that, because I'm going to ask you a lot of questions and I'm going to kind of keep them general in terms of that way. For our specific game, you don't have to reveal anything directly. So my first question is, do you have a person picked out, or what? Okay. Is it actually a werewolf? Is it a person who is turning into a werewolf?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So in my imagining, this person turns into a basically like a super wolf, but they do not turn back.
Oh, okay. Okay. So they
are permanently transfigured by this curse.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And so that makes it harder too for the village, like, because it's still the popular common belief that this person would be back and forth.
Okay.
But it makes it more difficult for them to kind of like narrow down.
Okay. So,
but also easier for you to kind of cast suspicion because it really could be anyone, right?
So I have a thought, but let me keep going with this couple lines of questions that I have. Okay. So do you have an idea, or do you know who that person is or was before the change?
No, I literally gave that no thought at all. Like, maybe I should have.
No, it's all good. So one of my thoughts that I wrote down here, and this is something that has to do with replayability, and this is something that I picked up from some of Zarkov Kowalski's adventures and some of the other adventures in the Lamentation lines that I found, is that a lot of them have these random elements of what starts the motion. Right? Mm-hmm. And that gives them replayability. So like in terms of worms, the way I incorporated that is that you roll 3d6 and that decides how far along is the infection, right? So if you've got time to stay and play, but you may not even know that, right? And then in terms of the Hastings party, you roll 3d6 to decide when is the next Hastings party happening, right? And those rolls change things dramatically, right? So one of my thoughts was you could have a random roll of who is the Beast of Gevaudan, because that could change things significantly depending on who it was.
Yeah. I don't mind the idea of a random roll, but I think it's a little bit narrow-sighted to think that it would have to be somebody from Gevaudan, because the territorial range of a wolf is several miles. So there's no reason that it couldn't be somebody from a different city or somebody that lived outside of the city. Right. They wouldn't have to necessarily be from
I'm just thinking in terms of like drama and story, it would be better if it was a named person that you could finger and say that this is the person who is or was or whatever. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That's just a conceit that you could make. Now you don't have to. There's just a thought, right? The other thought is since you said that and it's just occurred to me now, since it's werewolf and they become permanently this giant wolf creature, right? You already mentioned in the actual history of it, they killed this other big wolf and they thought it was the Beast of Gevaudan, but as it turns out, it wasn't, right? So what if, to add drama to our scenario, that is happening, right? And the King Louis puts out this bounty, but that's actually not the real beast. The real beast, the transformation happens while you're in town. And then now we have like, oh, we thought we got the real one or whatever. Not that you don't want to do like some kind of like stolen thunder thing, like, oh, you got him. Mm-hmm. Oh, no, you didn't. Do you know what I mean? But like, then there could be this thing where the actual Beast of Gevaudan awakens, and that could be connected to the randomness of who it is. Do you know what I'm saying? So just ideas to throw at you to consider. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You know, so I'm not saying that it is or isn't. This is why when we were talking about these things and we did the GameStorming last time, it's more just like a lot of shit thrown at the wall. And then I take all the notes and be like, okay.
I see what you're saying. Do not like that idea.
Okay.
I like the idea that if you're clever, you could come up with your own red herring, and that's where the historical fact comes from. Is like, oh well, you guys, tricked the people into thinking that maybe they killed this creature when really they didn't. But I don't like the idea of there being like another murderous wolf, but now this is like the real murderous wolf.
Right. All right. So just so I get these out of my head now: random encounter table for the city, random encounter table for the wilderness, and then a name list. But those are always in the template for the zine.
Yeah,
so.
I do have a because I know basically nothing about French culture. One of the first things I did was make a basically small table of French surnames.
Right. Yeah, so like on the back
and
of
I kind of like tried to pick ones that would like make sense for the area, because just like with English surnames, a lot of them are based on what your profession was at the time.
Right.
So I have like trader is like Mercier, Cartwright is Karen. And then there's a lot of like other like biblical ones. For St. Martin, that's Martine. Bernard is a Germanic name. There's even one for like sells firewood. That's Paquet. I don't know. I'm getting bad at the French, but I wanted to at least come up with something where you could ask me, oh, well, who is this villager? And then on the fly, I could think about, okay, well, this was the profession I gave them. So what would be a likely last name for them?
Right.
Let me consult. And then on the back, I have a list of female and male first names.
All right. So in terms of like just the layout of the zine, I think there's 10 and 10 or 12 and 12 and 12. So male, female surname or whatever. So just, but I'll take care of all that. You just pick your favorites out and I'll lay them in there. It's all good. Okay, so
I like Chevrolet.
Yeah.
Because it's the name of a car, but it means goat farmer.
What?
I know, right?
Are you serious?
Yeah. I mean, according to the interwebs.
Oh my god, that is amazing. Oh my god. No way. That's hilarious. Okay, anyway, before I'm completely derailed. So do you want to like sort of like detail the village, or like how do you want to, where are you at in terms of like what you think and how you have this put together, and what do you need to help refine?
I mean, like as a zine, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like not a clue. I don't know what should be in there.
Okay, so let's not think about it in terms of a zine. Let's just think about it in terms of a game. Like if you were to run this game at the game store, what else needs to be detailed and gone into a little more? Because if I'm being completely honest, when I put the zines together, I run the game like 4 times, and then I put my notes from all 4 games together, and that sort of becomes an outline of some kind. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I don't know how, like, you would make it a quicker game. If I was going to run at the game store, I want it to be like faster. But
well, no. I'm not saying I'm not necessarily saying running it as a one shot, even if it was like a couple session thing. Like it's basically putting it together so that if you ran this several times, it would be, you know what I mean, like your notes together would become the game, basically.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I guess like my first question is, if you run this as a game where your player characters are playing the witches themselves, do you just say like make a witch, or do we have like a basic like character?
No, I think
like this is the rogue stat pool and make one using this, or how do you approach?
I think in my mind, if we put the 3 witches in there that we have made. Right,
but then if they want to play it as one of the witches, they have to take one of those pre-gens?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
So you make them as just 3 pre-gens, and then I think...
Do you include the weird stuff that goes along with your... Like your character, for example, has a scorpion finger.
Yeah. No, I think so.
And like the wedding ring thing, and that goes along with it. Oh, yeah. Okay. I was just curious.
So no, I think you included all of those in there, and so you include them in a way that says... Like, these are the 3 sisters. Mm-hmm. If they...
Well, here's my other thing, though. So then is it predestined that your gaming table can only have these 3 people?
So my thought is...
What if I have 2? What if I have 4?
Well, if you have 2, then there are 2. You choose your 2 favorites, and maybe you say there's no third person. Or you say the third person is there, but they're like an NPC. Mm-hmm. Or if you have 4, we have a servant or 2. We could,
Right, but I mean, that's kind of like, okay, there's 4 of you at the table. 3 of you get to play witches and 1 of you gets to play the servant boy. I mean...
Well, I think it comes down to...
Not that you couldn't make Oliver shine. I'm just saying it's kind of like drawing the short straw.
Well, yes and no, though, because... And maybe this is just me, but sometimes it's fun to play that character that isn't directly connected to all the disaster that is about to happen. And it's like, cool... I'm going to, you know, do you know what I mean? Like you're playing the Alfred basically, right? And Alfred has a hugely important role in all of those stories. And so and Robin as well.
Yeah. I would have to say that probably out of the 4 player characters in our game, Oliver is a specialist. And so he is the most practically useful character in the entire
Without
game.
a doubt. Yeah. I agree. So I think that you include the 3 sisters. And then I think Oliver is definitely worth including. And then, which is important to note, Oliver is a sort of like a street urchin boy that I just sort of bribed into coming with us, basically, is on our journey from Italy.
He's the kid,
to
like
France.
when you're watching the Christmas Carol and Scrooge hollers out the door to the boy to go buy him a turkey. Yeah. Like that was Oliver, and then it just evolved from there into a working relationship.
Yeah, I think that and then if we need to make a couple more witches, maybe, then we just do that, and that's fine.
I think that's probably the way to go, is to make a couple of
extra witches.
Yeah.
I guess let me ask you this, and this is a piece of advice that we always give, is running games with an end in mind. Your ideal climax for this game with the witches, what does that look like?
So I created this game with the idea that you guys are going to fail at some point.
Right.
There is no doubt that at some point, the villagers, the army, whoever is going to find and kill this beast.
Okay.
So really, it's just a matter of trying to keep it alive as long as possible without dying. That's
without
truly your mission.
Right,
without getting caught, burned at the stake, that sort of thing.
So that's the real question then. And so then the beast is going to get caught and killed. And then the real question is whether or not there is enough suspicion to take the witches down. And then if there is enough suspicion, do they survive or do they escape? Because it is possible that, the mob could come for them and then they run away and survive.
Or you could just kill everyone. It could be like a Roanoke situation.
Yeah, but it's going to be tough.
Like, that's what really happened.
Maybe if it was a 5th edition game, maybe. But in BX or LOTFP, probably not going to happen. So, okay.
So something that I was kind of fiddling around with when it comes to taking this game from just something I'm running at our table casually to something I could run for strangers or something that could be produced into a zine is so I have a list of victims of the wolf, right? And so we have kind of like a rough timeline of how things happen. But I would really like to take something that is similar to like the Hot Springs Island timetable, or something that you see with like No Salvation for Witches, where you have an actual timer, and then this is the list of the events, and this will happen at set time, regardless of what you guys are doing, because I feel like that would add tension, and it would make the game easier to run as well. It would kind of put it on a more defined timeline for how long it will. Well, okay, a more defined timeline is how long it will take. You get what I'm saying? It would put it on a more defined timeline. But I don't know exactly like how to approach that. I don't necessarily like the hard time clock. If you have an hour to do this, but I kind of like the idea of the watches like you see with Hot Springs Island. So maybe you have like a stack of chips or whatever, but for every one sort of action that you guys take, I don't know. And with the werewolf thing, of course it seems to happen, at night. The wolf is nocturnal, and so then like more people go missing. But I don't necessarily think like every single night it's like, okay, now there's another victim. Now this is, because that's boring, right?
Yeah. No, I agree. I like the idea of the timeline. I think that presents an interesting amount of tension in that same way, like with a dread situation. You know what I mean? Like you're pulling the brick. Does it fall? Does it not fall? Is there a victim? Is there not a victim? I think it's a really good idea. I think connecting it with the watches idea is from Hot Springs is a good idea, because then it's like every so many nights or whatever this just happens. Or maybe you just do it to where you decide, I want a victim to die 2 out of 3 nights. So then every night the game master is just going to roll.
Well, it's not even like just for victims either, right? Because at a certain point, one of the I think he's a captain. Okay, so there's a local infantry leader in town who's been kind of facing this problem, right? And then at a certain point, somebody from more central France is going to arrive because King Louis has put a bounty out. So on the timeline too, you have kind of outsiders arriving to try and solve the problem. I'm just saying, it's not just like the wolf killing things. Like there are other things happening.
So then you can
as well.
So then I think now this is just an idea, but like You could have a random roll thing, and then one of the choices, however many you have, 6 or whatever it is, right? Victim dies. Victim is terribly wounded but survives, isn't dead yet. New set of mercenaries or whatever the heck it is arrive. You know, like along those kind of lines of things. Mm-hmm. You know, so that there's always going to be some kind of event that happens every single time, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a death. Is a possibility as well.
Okay.
Does it make sense?
Yeah.
And then obviously there's a nothing on that table because you always need to have a nothing. You know what I mean? Just in case. Oh, nothing happened. You know what I mean? You know?
1 in 50.
Right. Whatever it is. So, all right. So what else do you, what other question, like? For
me running the game, does the world seem full enough to you? Because it feels kind of stumbly to me, but then like I'm the one that has all the unknown questions.
No,
right?
I know what you mean. So yes and no. Okay, so the yes part of it, I feel like in terms of characters and people and personas and diversity of like archetypes of character that we've encountered, yes. Like that part is pretty good. I feel like you've developed your NPCs out pretty well, right? The one thing that I feel like in terms of in our initial game and going forward to make this into a zine that would help a lot is a better sort of like idea of what the town has in terms of like something to look at, like a game aid, like a map or something. So I think that's an important thing to have because maps are cool. You know what I mean? You know, and then it's cool artwork and blah 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 all that stuff. But I think it gives a visual representation of where things are and all that kind of stuff. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I did do some research about Gevaudan. So the Beast of Gevaudan killings happened from 1764 to 1767. So I just like randomly pulled a time frame out of the hat.
3 years?
I decided on 1765. Yeah.
3 years?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Uh-huh.
Oh my God. Oh my God. That's terrifying.
Yeah.
3 years in this little farm village of people being eaten by wolves.
Well, it's not just a little farm village. It's an entire province.
Well,
Gevaudan is a province.
Right.
So I've set you guys in this smaller farming village. But the region itself is, so there's the Rhone River, right? And then it is in the south central area of France. And it is, it's modern day Lozère. It's like Lozee with like an accent mark, R-E. Yeah. Anyways, so it was really difficult because you can find loads of information about the Beast of Gevaudan, right? But if you're like just trying to like casually research what the area actually looked like in the 1700s, there is almost nothing.
Yeah.
I was trying to find like a population number. I got like zilch, right? So I randomly decided with like a little bit of background info to maybe inform that decision that the area we're looking at has a population of 3,500 people.
Okay.
Which is quite a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know that I've really developed that enough to make you guys feel like there's that many people here. Like, it definitely feels like a much smaller town than that.
No, I think, in my mind, it felt smaller than that. But I feel like, at the same time, we were, when I think of games, I think of them like a TV show almost a lot of times now. And, like, in Deadwood, like, there's thousands of people in Deadwood. But when you watch the show, it's very engaging, and there's only 12.
With a few,
yeah, 12 people, right? And at the same time, the people we had interacted with were important movers and shakers of the area. So I feel like maybe that's more of an issue of like having a better picture of what the size and scope of things, which doesn't have anything to do with the characters you laid out, because the characters you laid out were well developed and they have their own personalities and their own agendas and all that kind of stuff. So
you have the Rhone River. In this area, you also have the Marguerite Mountains. I pictured kind of this village nestled between kind of these uplifted areas of mountain. So you have like this random area of like flat plains in between the mountains. And then you have a dock set up along the Rhone River where barges and merchants and things can stop to supply this village. So it is a dock town.
Well, and that I will say is one of the nice things to have is that, for example, in Worms, it was based off of this small salt mine or small lead mine that's outside of Cologne, right? And so there was enough flavor and things for me to pull from historically, but like about like who the archbishop was and like this rule of the Erzbistum and all this kind of stuff. But outside of that stuff, I don't really pay any measured reality to the real world. Like it's enough to flavor it, and you can say these places, and people will know they are. But outside of that, it sort of like begins to fade into the background. It doesn't matter.
Well, and I liked the idea of mountains because they provide a certain measure of seclusion, right? So if I say that this village is nestled between a section of mountains on the river, that means you're bounded on all sides by some sort of major land feature. Well, so you're very much isolated.
And the terrain is difficult too. If you were to go and try and go up into the mountains, it's not easy.
Right. And so from there, I kind of thought about, well, what kind of people are going to occupy this sort of space? What professions are going to be here? What kind of businesses are going to be here? So then I decided, okay, well, sheep. Right, that seems like a natural fit here. Lumber, because there's probably some woods areas to these mountains, and then I think we decided on like wheat because we needed another one. Like, you're going to be farming something.
Wheat, sheep, and wood.
Wheat, sheep, and wood. So that's I picked 3 of the 5 settlers of Catan trading commodities, and kind of everything else is informed from there. And then I decided for a population of 3,500, like if you broke down by like family size, I kind of determined about 580 houses.
Okay.
And so you guys have not met that number yet. I've just sort of presented you with new people as you go to find them and meet them. I'm glad you haven't gotten to 580 yet, but I feel like this stack is fairly significant of NPCs that there's probably like 15 here that we've created and ran into as time has gone on. And so like it's a decent sized area. So there's a general store, there's a church. It's a fairly fleshed out little town.
So outside of that kind of stuff, like the general village stuff, right? Because we have sort of like your classic tropes. There's a priest and there's some local politicians and blah, 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 all that kind of stuff, right? This is based off of kind of like what I already know from the game that we've played, right? And kind of what you've laid out here. Who are the direct adversaries? Like not the wolf, not the Beast of Gevaudan, but like if you're the 3 sisters, who are the direct adversaries to them?
Okay. So the most sense for direct adversaries would be, first off, people that are trying to keep the wolf alive, right? So in that circle you have, or trying to kill the wolf, sorry.
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah. People who are trying to kill the wolf, like firsthand.
Right.
So, I mean, at any given time, you're going to have like a handful of like peasant men that are down to like try and murder the wolf. Right.
Yeah.
But in town, you have
important named people. Right.
You have Captain Jean Baptiste Dumont. So he is a local military leader. And he has, he's like trying to rally people and to kill the wolf. You have the governor of the regional government delegate in the area. So it is obviously of his best interest to try and maintain peace and order in his area so that he can maintain his political position.
Right.
And that person is Etienne Lafont. And then you have the local priest, right? Because werewolves are obviously an abomination against the Lord God and should be destroyed. And so that is Father Abeline.
I guess let me ask you this. You mentioned that one of the people in the town is a cleric.
Yeah.
So since this isn't a classic werewolf case, and it's not a person shifting into werewolf and back and forth, can this curse be removed by a regular remove curse?
Yes, because I thought that would be more interesting.
Okay. Because
it sort of presents the possibility of instant quick failure, which I like.
Right.
Like, so you're going to have to be clever and you're going to have to pay attention to the people in the village, or you will fail.
Right. Well, then it also, if you're the mercenaries on the other side of it and you catch the werewolf and you remove the curse and now you have this person here, unless they're just people that aren't invested in the game or invested in the area or whatever, what do you do with the perpetrator now, right?
So I'm just going to tell you, I was kind of fiddling around with Vornheim when I was making this, right? And it had some really excellent charts for just, random people in town and socialites and well-to-do folks. And so I had rolled quite by accident that this person was going to be, I think it was like some kind of wizard, but I didn't really want a wizard in the town, so I decided it would be a cleric instead. And so that's how I ended up with someone who was going to be capable of just automatically removing the curse of the werewolf. But I also rolled randomly for like their vice or shortcoming that everybody can come with, right? And so theirs is that they fear to touch the ground where blood has been spilled. So
Jesus, it's never going to happen.
I know, right?
Right. Well, that's a really fun. That's one of.
And then I thought, I'm just going to keep it because it's such an interesting sort of juxtaposition.
Right. No, I agree. And that's one of the fun. That's one of the few reasons why I like random tables is because you can have happy accidents like that. Otherwise, they make me crazy. But sometimes, if they're well put together, you can have happy little accidents that create really, really cool, interesting story and role-playing moments, which is exactly what you have there. And that's really good. That's really cool.
And I guess they're not in the town at the moment, but at some point, like I said, basically the cavalry is going to arrive from France. And then it kind of gets kicked up a notch because basically, like, I've paid in Captain Jean-Baptiste Dumas as sort of this, like, bumbling idiot.
Incompetent, yeah.
Right. So he's like a local infantry leader, yeah, but he's like more of a pompous sort of like, I'm telling you stories of my greatness, whether or not they're actually real or not kind of character. Then at some point, Jacques Portefeuille will arrive in town. And historically, he and his men are the ones that kill this beast. And historically, he's basically like a child. Yeah. He's like 14 or something
really
like that.
Like, yeah.
In my brain, he did not look like a 12-year-old.
So I just had an interesting idea. We have the idea of this chart for what happens, right? We know this is an escalating situation, right? So we have people dying and we have mercenaries arriving. And then eventually, like you said, the cavalry is truly going to arrive and this Jacques guy is going to show up. So what if we have a roll and then as things happen, there's a modifier that gets added to that continues to ratchet up things. Do you know what I'm saying? So if the roll is so much, then mercenaries arrive. If the roll is so much, then, this thing arrives. Do you know, does it make sense? Like that's a possibility.
And that is based on...
So there will be some kind of, like, so as things get worse, more likely people are going to come, right? So what I'm envisioning is like for every death that happens, maybe that's a +2, or for every dismemberment that happens with a survivor, that's a +1. And then eventually when you roll whatever the roll is at a certain point, like this means that once you get to a 15, mercenaries will arrive. And then once you get to a 20 or whatever you choose to set them at, do you know what I mean? Like that way there's some kind of like escalating thing that can, continue to happen.
I like that idea. I also like the idea of including minuses. So, like, your character is fairly politically connected.
Right.
And from a wealthy family. So there's the potential that you could use just social political influence to try and impede that process in maybe, like, a very real physical way as far as, like, actual transportation on the river or some kind of government finagling, pulling political levers to just delay the dispatch of troops to the area.
Right.
So when you're playing the witches, something I don't like as a GM, like I want to provide obstacles to the players and I want to be a little bit adversarial, but I want it to feel fair. Right. I don't want it to feel like...
No, I get it.
I'm like, as a GM, you're always metagaming, but I don't want
Well, you control the whole world. Right.
I don't want it to feel to you guys like I'm just like using my knowledge to inform what the NPCs know to push back against you. So the idea I kind of just had now, a large part of what's supposed to make this difficult is the idea of suspicion, right? That's kind of built in with just, like I said earlier, like you're single women together in this area where it doesn't make sense for you to like be looking for your summer home in the middle of the werewolf terror province, right? And so I like the idea of it being a possibility that villagers could just come for you guys. Mm-hmm. But then I don't want to automatically throw that idea at you because that feels unfair to me. So I think the best way to solve that is to have some sort of suspicion tracker.
Yes, that's where I was going to go.
That's actually like a mechanical effect based on your actions. And I'm okay with it being tipped a little bit at an unfair balance to start with because, like I said, your very arrival in circumstance is inherently suspicious. But that feels less unbalanced to me, and it feels more, the fact that you give it a mechanical dynamic makes it a little less, it feels more fair. So I don't know exactly what that would look like, though.
So I suppose there's a couple of things that could affect that. So you're going to have a suspicion tracker, right? And we'll say 0 is no suspicion, or is neutral, right? And -5 we'll say is like, oh, it's not possible. And then 5 is like, get the pitchforks, right?
Right.
Okay.
And I think that should definitely be a possibility.
Right. No, okay. I agree. So let's, just for argument's sake, we're going to say that is our spectrum for right now. Okay.
Okay.
And what if when, I think the natural progression for this is for people to try and cast doubt on other people. Mm-hmm. Like that's immediately where my mind goes to for this, right? Especially when you sort of preface it and sort of you're going to inform the players that, hey, there's all this suspicion that people might be werewolves, and you can have the moments where as they walk through town, people are closing their shutters and leery of strangers and all that kind of witch hunt to, for a terrible pun to use. And then you can use their dice rolls and success or failure to sort of shift that suspicion one way or the other. Or who do they push on? So this person might be held in high esteem in Gevaudan. So when they try and say this person is the one that's causing this problem, if it's a person that they would think there's no way, then maybe that increases their suspicion. At the same time, if it's the person who no one likes or whatever it is, or or you could factor in the evidence that they bring, right? Do they frame them up in a good way? Is there like they find like satanic literature, Luciferian literature, and like wolf fur and bits, and maybe like some like severed and chewed meat or whatever, like in their home, to modify those kind of things.
Yeah. And what I like it too, because it kind of encourages, it provides another level of pressure. Yeah, it provides another level of pressure on you guys, but it also provides an incentive for you to interact within the town. Whether that's trying to garner over important political people to sympathetic side, mm-hmm. or casting, like you said, casting shade and doubt on other people in the town, but it encourages that interaction on another level. I
don't know if you like the idea of it, but I have this vision of where, like, remember how I told you the other ones have, if we keep the same format, which we don't necessarily have to, mm-hmm. this is the back cover of the, do you know what I'm saying? The cardstock part. This is your map of Gevaudan, and then you can actually have on the bottom a suspicion tracker. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they can move a die back and forth down across it. So, because I
like the idea of you guys being able to see it too.
Yes, because there's something tangible about being like, oh God, it's at 4. Mm-hmm. Oh, what do we do? You know what I mean? There's like a measurable suspense effect that happens by doing that.
I also like the idea that you could present a succeed or fail at a cost kind of dynamic using the suspicion tracker. Like, okay, you failed that roll, but if you'd like, we can say you succeeded, but at the cost of garnering more suspicion.
Another suspicion.
Yeah. So I kind of like that little bit of leeway that you can create with that too.
And then I think that
could be fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because we just do a blurb about like suspicion. These are the rules for suspicion and whatever. And then you can even do it where like if you botch the roll, like if you roll a 1 or whatever, right, then it's automatically going to do X or whatever, catastrophic.
I like that. I have to flush that out a little bit more, I think. Yeah. But yeah, I like that idea.
And we got plenty. That's the idea of doing this here. This is where these, because like I wouldn't have came up with this idea at all without you coming out and being like, "Hey, here's this thing. Oh, cool. What if we did that?" You know what I mean? Like that's why this format exists. Do you know what I mean? Like because I feel like the Worms thing and the Hastings Party benefited tremendously from us just sitting down for an hour and a half or whatever it is, and just sort of like blasting out ideas and whatever. So the one thing that I haven't mentioned hardly at all is your NPCs, right?
Yeah.
But to be fair, I don't feel like we need to go into detail on them because They're solid. They're well put together. Our interactions have been pretty good. Now, we've also detailed how we put together our villages and how we sort of build our sandbox worlds already. So I don't feel like there's a whole need to go into a lot of that. The only thing that I will say is, and I know you already have it done, at least I'm reasonably certain because I watch how you take notes on the note cards you have, is that they each seem to have their own motivation.
Yeah. Well, and they are connected to other people within the town through, this person is jealous of this person.
Right.
This person is married to this person, but secretly desires this person,
right.
So on and so forth. It's an intertangled web of relation.
In terms of this GameStorming session, I just don't want people to get the feeling that we're overlooking that part of it, but that's already done in this case because we've ran this game before. Mm-hmm. Whereas with the Hastings Party and with Worms, it was brand new and it was like, let's build out some people to do this with. Do you know what I'm saying? So this... is making the assumption correct that you kind of built these characters out in the way that we sort of traditionally do?
So I could just give you like an example. So one of the people that you met is Miss Claudine Mercier. So she is the sister of the man who runs the store. The general store in town. And so their father, Jean Mercier, is actually victim number 4 of the werewolf. So that kind of colors how she views things within the town in general, right? Because her father's actually gone missing from this. And so then she is also a scribe for Mr. Lafont, who is the main representative from the region. Like, he is the chief political power in the region. So she is described as being young, right? Because she's 17, and naive in appearance, specifically.
Oh, okay.
Right? Because that, you could write naive, but if you write naive in appearance, that kind of gives you a different, and that's like a cue to me. And then I gave her a couple of motivations as well. So she is ambitious and she wants recognition.
Okay.
And so that is her, like, those are my blurbs to just remember like who she is. And, each one of them has, a similar sort of backstory to them, and how they interrelate to both the city and to other individuals.
And it's funny
in the city.
when I describe that as a write-up because it's really not in the traditional RPG sense, but like that's what I want. I want like a couple connections to people in the city.
Well, it's going to be short and sweet because I want to be able to look at the back of it and within 2 seconds understand how this person is going to interact with other people based on who they are, their basic synopsis.
Right.
Like it has to be functional. If you give me 2 paragraphs about this NPC, that's too much.
Right. Do you need some kind of a tracker or some kind of a metric for when the beast goes down? How do you see that happening? Because I guess my question is, you talked about a lot of concern for making sure the suspicion has some kind of mechanism to sort of like take the game master out of it so that you don't feel like you're being unfair, right? Do you feel like there needs to be some other kind of mechanism for when the beast will finally get killed?
I don't really think so, because it's a supernatural creature, but like I have a stat list for it. Like it's a developed creature. Like I see it just like if you kill a dragon, like it has stats, it has hit points.
No, I get that. Rating. But like the witches aren't going to go out there and go kill it, right? It's going to be more than likely this Jacques character that goes out there and get it, right?
But if he does, it will be fair because it will be, like this is this established NPC. These are his stats. This is the creature that he's fighting. I'm not saying like I'm going to roll for Jacques. Now I'm going to roll for the beast, right? That would be kind of silly. Although I suppose I could have you guys roll for the beast in that battle, and that could be interesting. But like you can see, based on, I don't know, I suppose it could be kind of interesting to keep a tracker based on like public support and his ability to rally people to his cause in the city. I mean, again, I feel like it would be very unbalanced to start with because they obviously want this creature to be gone. So it would be hard for him to win people over.
No, I don't disagree with that. But also, you're also asking people to go out and risk their life against this murder machine, which a lot of people are not necessarily willing to do. Right. Like, they will support you, but I don't want to go.
I'm right behind you.
Larry should go. That should be Larry.
There are a number of plans that they come up with along the road that I kind of have left for you guys to try and like foil. So we're just kind of getting into that now, but one of them is, and it's an actual like historical plan where they have some of the local infantry soldiers dress up as peasant women to try and lure the creature out.
Oh,
like that's an actual thing that they do in history. Yeah. They try like poison bait. You know, there's a number of different plans that they kind of like the Black Orchestra. Like these are the actual historic plans for killing Hitler. And so I guess I kind of forgot that I was doing that, but I have presented you guys where as you interact with the town, there's a potential for you overhearing these plans or stumbling across them, so that you can kind of try to react to those and basically like sabotage the plans of the military in capturing and killing the beast. So I guess that's kind of a cool thing to include. I guess the other thing as it goes, the main way that you guys interact with the beast is through the terrible things that it leaves behind. And so there are some clues with that. I mean, there's obviously some mythology as far as what you guys know about the beast already, just based on the fact that you're part of a coven that's designed to protect it in a way.
Okay, I have an important question here. As you just talked about this a little bit. This is something I actually overlooked in our game. We have an actual person who was transformed. Right? So my question is, if we actually know who that person is, no, just hang on, just stay with me for a minute, okay? I'm not saying we, but if the game master already knows who that person is, right? And that person has motivations, and that person has connections to people in the town, does this werewolf have any semblance or memory of the person that it once was, so that it's more likely, at least initially, and like the first few victims are people that it didn't like or something, and then it falls completely into the beast, and then that goes away? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so
no, I don't think so.
Okay,
I see it as being like just a complete transformation and stripping of all humanity from
right on
that person.
Very good. I was just
because it's kind of the punishment in and of itself, right? There is no.
No, it's all good. I just didn't know, like, initially, like maybe the first victim might be someone that they.
No, it's probably like the first victim is most likely someone like they knew and were intimate with just because of convenience,
right?
Like
they're
the
right
same
there.
thing you see with like serial killers, right? Like this is the first one is like a crime of convenience, and then like it spreads out from there.
Right,
so it's a similar sort of thing, just based on location and proximity.
Well, my only question would be is if the other part of that is that if they knew who it was, who this beast used to be, like it might give them clues as to where to find it or how to track it, or what. Does it make sense?
Right.
Because it might reveal some tendencies that they might have or something. Do you know what I'm saying? I also, it has to be a man, doesn't it? Okay. Yeah, never mind.
Yeah, it's always a man.
Yeah. I was just thinking...
It kills indiscriminately, but...
Right. Well, I just think that there could be a cool, interesting...
It's the idea. It's like an X... Like one of those X-carried genes. You know what I mean? So like it's passed down from your mom, but you're more likely to get it if you're a guy because the Y doesn't like cover for it. Like, like hemophilia, right?
Yeah. I was just wondering, like, if there's this moment where you remove the curse and it happens to just be like this sad, young, innocent girl who happened to be, and like then, like on the end of like, I guess it'd be more on the mercenary side, like how do you dispense justice now and how do you rationalize that in sort of like a hard moral choice? But that doesn't fit here, but it could be
right. No, but cool I did like the idea of incorporating that into the victim list. So once you guys are established in town, making one of the female characters who's sort of like powerful and relatable NPC wise in the town, one of the victims of the werewolf. So there's this moment of like inner turmoil where you're like, oh, well, this is this strong woman that I relate with. Do I still let this creature kill her? Right.
And then we're here to prolong the suffering and increase this. But like at the same time, this is a curse of man.
Right.
Right. Yeah, that's a cool. Oh, I like that. So that might be, I guess there could be a thing where perhaps the three sisters could enact some kind of a ritual or something to guide the werewolf in terms of like it picks up the scent of someone. So like they could not necessarily guarantee that that person would die, but it would make it more likely that they would get attacked. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, that's interesting. Kind of like Sleepy Hollow, where like she directs the wrath of the headless horseman. Kind of not like necessarily that specific, but yeah, like the leanings.
And then
I like that.
And then like maybe also along those same lines, if they could know the victim potentially, right? Maybe there's like through some kind of divination, and then how do they reconcile if it is this strong female persona that how do they reconcile that, because they're supposed to prolong the suffering, but like I like that sort of like hard moral choice as well.
Well, I had created too where you guys knew, I don't have it right in front of me, there was like a particular herb that like it wasn't really, it wasn't like garlic and vampires, whereas like it repels them, but it was just so I got the idea from the Doctor Who episode where there's like werewolves, but they're repelled by, I think it's like mint or something, leaves. And so that's something that you guys just inherently know, like it's not repelled by it, but it just really dislikes the smell of, I think maybe we decided on wolfsbane because it's called wolfsbane.
Yeah,
why not?
Traditionally, right? And it's in every player's handbook and blah, 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 blah. We'd reference our other poison episode where you find out what wolfsbane really is, blah, 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 whatever. Anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
So we decided, so that could be an interesting thing too. So, okay, well, I know this is a thing. So if there's people that I'm wishing to protect, rather than sicking the wolf on these particular people, I could plant some kind of, like wolfsbane or, some sort of protection upon these couple of houses where I'd rather it not go.
Right. Right on.
Kind of direct it in that fashion. Do you want to talk about the actual creature at all?
If you want to, I just assumed it was sort of like going to be like a giant direwolfish kind of creature.
It is and it isn't. I don't know if you've picked up any hints of it being slightly different than a regular wolf based on some of the plot hints that I've dropped thus far. There's something interesting, actually, historically. The Beast of Gevaudan is described as being a very large wolf, but it's also described as having a very weird clubbed tail. Like, not like, for some reason, giant club tail. So I gave this creature that, and it actually has a bashing attack it can do with its tail.
Right on.
I also gave it, like, order of attack, because I like that with creatures. So I did mention this to you guys specifically. It will attack the most armored creature first. And so you guys do know that in character.
Right, yeah.
So that's kind of like you have some insider knowledge that will help protect you. Like it will definitely save your life. And the other thing that's tricky about the armor, which I kind of liked, is okay, well, if I'm in a group of 12 people, that's handy. If I'm by myself and unarmored, like,
it doesn't matter.
It's still just me. And now I have no armor on.
Right.
Obviously it has dark vision, and that makes sense, right? I kind of rolled a combination on the random esoteric creature generator, but I sort of also just pulled some things off the table that I thought would make sense for a werewolf that was like a little bit different. So it also has clairaudience, because I thought that would be exciting. So it can just, like, it just knows sound within a 50-foot radius. Can hear just
well, and that sort of fits in with that trope anyway. So,
right. Like, yeah, all the better to hear you with,
right?
Dear, right, that kind of thing. It is the big bad wolf. Is there anything like about the creature? Like, did I make it sound like werewolf enough, but different enough too? Or did you even pick up on any of that?
Some of it I did, yes. Some of it I did not. However, I was more concerned about our safety, and like there was good description of like the level of like carnage and mutilation. And so it was like, we are not equipped to do this. We should not be here, which I think is a fun thing to play with if you're the witches, is sort of like on the GM side of things, as the vulnerability of not being out there and being covered in plate steel and protected. And even if you had that stuff, it wouldn't be appropriate, because the current situation is like, wait a minute, why are these three women here out of nowhere? Why are they also like wearing plates? Yeah, like, wait a second, you're a couple centuries late. You know what I mean? So I think it's important to mention sort of like traditional roles and things that will draw huge suspicion, because even outside of whether or not you go out there with pitchfork and whatever, if you own, actual armor that's fitted to you, people are going to be like, what the deuce is happening? Who is this?
First of all, how did you afford that? Secondly.
Right. I don't know. Is there anything else that you were worried about, like, an hour and 10 or so? So I didn't know if there's anything else you need to...
Fun random fact that I have written down here. Actually, 30,000 men volunteered to try and, like, over the course of those 3 years, to try and kill this creature.
How many people did it kill, do you know?
It is incredibly vague about that part, because I tried to find that too. I was like, well, okay, so what percentage of the population was decimated from... There's surprisingly little information that has survived from the 1700s as far as hard facts go.
Right on.
I don't know, maybe if I was part of like some sort of historical research like library somewhere.
Right,
maybe,
you might know, but
on the general internet, not finding a whole lot. We talked about like escalation and victims. I think it's important to include things that aren't people as well.
Yeah.
That sort of lends to it being, you know, like a beast or a wolf that's less
opportunistic predator.
Yeah, it makes it seem less calculating and planned out when there's also like, you know, dead sheep, dead chickens, dead dogs, whatever.
Right on. Well, do you think this helped or?
I think so. Yeah, I've got some other ideas. I was just, I don't know, kind of struggling, like I said, just turning it from a game to a zine and like how to take it from something that I'm using to make it usable for someone else.
Right, yeah.
Is difficult.
No, I get it. I get what you're saying. And I'll show you the format that I have laid out and everything else and sort of get you started. Because that's I think once you see how it kind of comes together, it's really simple and straightforward. It's just getting that process started. So this gives you a sort of like a glimpse into sort of how we initially put some of our games together and the process of how we sort of like distill down ideas for our zines and whatnot. So, yeah, hopefully you guys get something out of this and maybe can sort of help you sort of like how we put it together. And I will say that it is very nice to be able to sort of sit down and bounce ideas off of someone else to sort of like sharpen your ideas down. And I realize it's kind of hard to do sometimes because the people that are in your gaming group, you can't sharpen the ideas with them because they're going to be playing the game. So that does make it a little bit difficult, but yeah, I don't know. It really, really works well and helps a lot, but it's kind of hard to find someone to do that with, but if you can, that's a really good resource. So, right on. So, as you know, we're a member of the Gonna Geek Network, so I'm not entirely sure when this one is going to drop, so hard to plug an individual episode, but there are loads and loads of great geeky podcasts with all kinds of different topics, from comic books to movies to different shows that are going on. And you can check them all out on thegonnageeknetwork.com. And if you like what we do here at Just One More Fix, you can support us at patreon.com/JustOneMoreFix and get access to all of our raw audio feeds and our quarterly zine that includes Worms, The Hastings Party, and soon coming The Three Sisters. And get a hold of them at the PDF or print format, depending on what level you support us at. And you can be awesome and join our Patreon supporters like Timothy Barra, Hector Trelane, Tiziano Furlano, Alistair H., Simon McNair, Alan White, and the OG Todd Olson. I think that'll do it for us this week, and we will see you guys next week.
Thanks for listening. This has been an episode of Just One More Fix. Music has been provided by Kevin MacLeod. You can find him at incompetech.com. You can support us at patreon.com/JustOneMoreFix or follow us on Twitter at Just One More Fix.